There are people who simply can't exist in peace. They don't know how to live without sticking their nose where it doesn't belong, without trying to boss others around, as if the world was built to revolve around their opinion. This story, my friends, is about a woman like that. The kind of person who wakes up in the morning, drinks coffee with sweetener, looks in the mirror and thinks, "Who am I going to control today?" She was the uncrowned queen of the neighborhood. She arrived like someone opening a franchise of her own personality. She wore a blazer even to walk her dog, handed out rules like someone throwing rice at a wedding, and talked about residential decorum as if she were giving a speech at the UN. For her, every house had to look like it had been taken out of a real estate catalog, and if a flower was 2 centimeters out of symmetry, it was grounds to file a complaint with the HOA. Yes, she was one of those. That residents' association, which is already unbearable, seemed like a new toy in her hands. The problem? The target this time was my father, a simple, stubborn man, passionate about 2 things: tropero beans and the tractor he had inherited from his father, a rusty, noisy iron thing that looked like it had come out of a 1932 agricultural museum. But for him, it was more than a machine. It was memory, it was history, it was pride. And he left the tractor parked next to the barn. Everyone always saw it, always knew about it, and it was never a problem. Until this woman decided that the tractor offended the aesthetics of the street. The tractor did, as if it were holding up a banner that read, "Ugliness," in big letters. She started off light, sending those aggressive letters. "Gentle resident, we observe a visibly obsolete piece of equipment, compromised aesthetics, voluntary removal considerations." A formal theater that didn't even disguise its arrogance. My father obviously ignored it. And ignoring it was the fuel she needed to raise her game. From the letter, she went to the official complaint. She called an HOA meeting. She made a PowerPoint. PowerPoint, yes. A slide with a picture of the tractor at dramatic angles, saying that it diminished the value of neighboring properties. As if someone was going to run out of a $300,000 house just because they saw an old tractor on the lot next door. The most hilarious thing? She never had the courage to speak to my father directly. She always sent messengers, emails full of, "We hope we can count on your cooperation," and invitations to civilized dialogue, while she prepared a dossier to try to force him to remove the tractor. By then, my father had already dubbed her the Concrete Lady. He said that where she stepped, no grass grew, and it wasn't a lie at all. She wanted the tractor gone. And he was even more attached to that contraption. He had it washed, painted moss green, it got worse, put a swing tire chain on it just to tease her. Then his wife went crazy. She said that the tractor threatened the safety of children in the community because a child could climb on it and fall from a height of 2 meters. 2 meters, people. She even measured the tractor's shadow to invent danger. She petitioned the other neighbors and tried to create an aesthetic review committee. She was determined to win through exhaustion. Only she underestimated my father, and also forgot that when you mess with a memory, you mess with a hurricane. Now, here's the good part. A friend of my father's, who has worked at the town hall for years, heard the story and decided to pull up the woman's land records, just out of curiosity. Just to see if she really was as untouchable as she thought. And guess what? Part of her house, the garage, the Zen garden, even the deck where she drank tea with gluten-free cookies, was in an unregistered area. An entire section of the building was extending onto land that technically belonged to the municipality. An illegal extension, an architectural aberration disguised as a charming extension. And that's when the gears really started turning. When my father found out about the irregularity of her house, he didn't say a word. He just smiled in that way that mixes irony with revenge served cold. His tractor practically became a monument to resistance, and he began to make a point of using it more than ever. Early in the morning, at 7 o'clock, The engine rumbled like a metallic roar across the roofs of the neighborhood. He drove past slowly, looking at her house as if to say, "Good morning, Princess." She, of course, freaked out. She said that the noise was noise pollution, that it was affecting her emotional well-being. She started filming, recording times, even creating a spreadsheet with days, times, and approximate decibels, as if she were putting together a lawsuit against a 1950s tractor. But the more she fussed, the more he enjoyed himself. And I watched from the sidelines, indignant and amazed, because, frankly, there are things you can only believe by seeing them. Until one day, she decided to cross the line again. He called for an inspection by the town hall, one of those visits that pretend to be random but were actually requested with blood in their eyes. The inspectors came, knocked on our door, asked to see the tractor to assess safety conditions, a ready-made joke, because the tractor was standing idle, unplugged, in a corner of the land. It was like asking permission to assess the threat of a tree, but it backfired. The inspector, a gentleman who looked like he'd seen everything in his life, looked at the tractor, scratched his chin, looked around, and then asked, "This model here, it's a Farmel H, right? My grandfather had one just like it, a relic." My father cracked a smile so wide it looked like a denture advertisement. The inspector even took a photo of the tractor and said he was going to show it to his son, who loved these old things. His report? No irregularities. Equipment at rest, inside the property, no risk identified, and the tractor was acquitted, almost canonized. She, on the other hand, began to taste despair. And there's nothing more dangerous than someone who has built an empire of rules on rotten ground. Because when the truth starts to seep through the cracks, the castle of certificates starts to crumble. And that's exactly what happened. The friend from the town hall, after seeing the size of the irregularity in her construction, decided to open an investigation. It was no longer just a question of aesthetics or silly encroachment. She had built in a public area, on municipal land, without authorization, without registration, without anything. And it could turn into a demolition case. Yes, demolition, the magic word. But before any official pen hit the paperwork, my father had an idea. I'm not proud of it. No, I am. He called a friend of ours from the countryside, who owned a cattle farm, and asked him to bring 3 cows and a calf to the yard, just for a weekend. He said it was to freshen up the atmosphere, and there they were, happily grazing next to the tractor, as if they were part of the scenery. He even hung up a makeshift sign, "Historical Heritage on Display. Do not feed the animals." On Sunday afternoon, she called the police. Yes, she called the police. She said there was an illegal farming activity going on next to her house. I had to leave the house to keep from laughing. The police arrived, saw the cows, looked at her, looked at the tractor, looked at her again, and asked, "Are you saying that the problem is the cows?" She read, snorting, pointing like a cartoon character. "This isn't a farm. This is a residential area. It has protocols. It has rules." And the policeman, with the calm of someone who has seen a lot. "But the cows are on private land, fenced off. They're not loose. They're not causing any damage." And with a final touch of irony, "And technically, their sound is much more pleasant than that of some people I know." That day, something inside her broke. I don't know if it was her ego, her patience, or her illusion of control. Because she stood there, watching her empire slip through her fingers. And that's when she made the biggest mistake of all. She threatened to sue my father personally. She said that if he didn't remove the tractor and the cows, she would file a lawsuit for disturbing the peace. Not by law, but out of revenge. That's when he decided to pay her back in the most absurd, scandalous way possible. And look, if you think this is the end of the story, you have no idea what was to come. Because that night, my father called me into the shed. He showed me a map with the exact perimeter of the woman's building. He pointed with his finger and said, "Here, from here on, all this is illegal." and I'm tired of hearing noise coming from there every weekend. It's time to clean it up. At first, I thought he was just joking, but when he took out the tractor keys and put them in his pocket, I realized it was serious. I should have been suspicious when I saw my father washing the tractor again. It wasn't a simple Sunday clean. It was meticulous, almost ceremonial. Every gear, every rusty bit, getting attention as if it were a racing car about to enter a competition. He didn't say a word, just whistled an old tune as he wiped the fuel tank with an old rag, as if waking up a sleeping iron dragon. That night, the sky was clear, the neighborhood silent, and the world seemed to have no idea what was going to happen. But my father did. He came into the house, drank a black coffee without sugar, looked at me and said, "Does she want a paper war? Well, she's going to get a steel answer." I tried to laugh it off, thinking it was bravado. But when he put on the old jacket he only wore when he was going to deal with something serious, I felt a chill. This wasn't just stubbornness, it was a personal mission. It was revenge with a motor. He waited until 4 in the morning, the time of ghosts, the moment when no one looks out of the window, when the lights in the houses are just reflections of the street lamps and the dogs are too tired to even bark. It was in this silence that the old tractor woke up. The ignition resounded through the street like a metallic laugh. I, still dazed, looked through the kitchen curtain and saw he had a construction helmet on his head, leather gloves, and a smile that I only saw when he won the scratch lottery in '98. The tractor moved forward slowly, like an old, tired animal that still knows exactly where it's going. It passed through the woman's makeshift fence, which, by the way, was already a bit crooked since the last rain, and entered her land like someone returning home. And then the dance of destruction began. First, the ornamental garden. That pile of decorative stones that she paid a fortune to make look natural, swept away like breadcrumbs. Then the deck, that meditation sanctuary where she did yoga with whale audio playing. It became firewood. The sound of the tractor was drowned out by the cracking of the wood, as if the house was crying before it even realized it was next. I don't know what came over me, but I ran out barefoot, stumbling over the living room carpet, still trying to figure out if I was dreaming. When I got outside, I saw the scene with my eyes wide open. The tractor, with its headlight illuminating the fence wire, heading straight for the garage. Yes, the garage, the most illegal part of the whole building. My father didn't swerve. He didn't hesitate. The front shovel hit the wall as if it were pushing a cardboard box. The structure gave way with a metallic groan. The roof tilted. The slats broke. And in seconds, what had been the temple of her car became a pile of rubble. Lights began to come on in the houses. Doors opened. People came out in their pajamas, blankets on their backs, cell phones in hand, recording, laughing, stunned. The woman herself came out of the house screaming, wrapped in a robe, holding a phone in her hand and shouting, "I'm going to call the police," as if the police were a personal army at the touch of a button. She looked a mixture of desperate and incredulous, as if the universe was breaking the rules of the condominium just to humiliate her. My father got off the tractor as calmly as if he'd just gone to get some bread. He looked at her, took off his helmet, wiped his sweaty forehead with the sleeve of his jacket, and said, "You want to play at regulating other people's land, then learn to regulate your own first." And off he went, with the tractor still running behind him, like a faithful dog waiting for its master. The woman, trembling, fell to her knees in the middle of the destroyed garden, repeating things that nobody understood. She was in a state of moral collapse, because her weapon had always been control, and at that moment, she had none. The police arrived within 15 minutes. They were greeted by a crowd of neighbors, some still with toothbrushes in their mouths, all with the same expression. Finally, someone has done something. The policeman who seemed to be in charge looked at the destruction, looked at it, looked at the tractor, then looked at my father, who was sitting on the porch drinking coffee as if nothing had happened, and asked, "Did you do this?" And my father, with the cleanest face in the world, replied, "It was a trajectory accident." I think the tractor got confused with all the exotic plants there. The policeman sighed. He knew this was going to give him a headache, but the truth was simple. That part of the building was illegal, and he knew it, because the town hall was already watching. The tractor may have been the hammer, but the nail had been loose for a long time. The woman tried to argue, to show paper, to point fingers, but it was like shouting in a hurricane. No one there wanted to listen anymore. That same day, the report was made. The tractor was detained for investigation, but my father didn't care. He said he needed a vacation. And her house? Well, what was left was a reminder that when you build your morals on top of others, it's good to make sure your ground is firm, because one day, someone might drive by with a tractor and remind you that after all, old iron can also teach you lessons. The image of her garage turning to dust was still in everyone's head for days. It looked like a scene from a movie. An old man on a tractor destroying the control fantasy of a woman who thought she was the world's aesthetic inspector. And the irony, it was just her, with all that arrogance packaged in footnote regulations, who ended up becoming the neighborhood joke. Nobody took her seriously anymore, not even the usual hacks who used to fawn over her for fear of being fined for planting sunflowers out of season. The local press, always eager for a suburban drama, got wind of the story in less than 48 hours. Man destroys irregular construction, with tractor inherited from father in act of revolt against HOA. That was the headline of a story that went viral here. There was no shortage of comments, people saying that the old man was a hero, that the tractor should be listed as historical heritage, that the woman deserved every brick thrown at her. And of course, there were also the moralists on duty saying that violence wasn't the way to go, that we should solve things with dialogue. But can we agree? If dialogue were the answer, she would have dropped the ball a long time ago. The funniest thing was seeing the HOA in a panic. The entire board went into wash-their-hands mode. They disappeared, hid, started saying that they had never approved anything, that this woman was acting on her own. One of them even had the nerve to show up at my house, offering friendly mediation. My father listened to everything, nodded, and in the end said, "Mediation is when the two parties still respect each other." She tried to destroy my memory. I just showed her that my memory also has a motor. The man swallowed, thanked her, and never showed up again. On her side, life became a reality show of misfortune. First came the official notice from the town hall, informing her that the entire irregular part of the house would be demolished. She tried to appeal, of course, but couldn't back up half the lies she had told in the previous documents. The engineer responsible for the construction showed up to say that it was all her request, and that he was just following orders. They threw her under the bus without mercy. Then came the insurance. She tried to sue the insurance company, claiming vandalism and intentional attack. But the technical report threw in her face that you can't cover damage caused by an illegal structure built without authorization. The insurance company replied with a cold email, the kind that looks like it was written by a polite robot. "We're sorry, but your claim has been denied on the basis of clauses 7.1 and 9.4. which exclude damage in unregulated areas." She must have cried reading that, or screamed, or spat angry foam at the mirror. I don't know, but I would have loved to have seen it. While all this was going on, my father became something of a legend. The old man with the tractor became an affectionate nickname. There was even a neighbor who printed a T-shirt with a crude illustration of the tractor destroying a fence, with the phrase, "Respect my history, or I'll run over it." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The old man, of course, loved it. He said he had finally left a legacy. "I've planted tomatoes all my life and nobody noticed, but I passed by once with the tractor in the right place and became a symbol of residential freedom." But the woman didn't give up easily. She tried to sue my father, to get me involved, even to get my sister's cat involved in her fence. But justice wasn't on her side either. The judge looked at the documents, looked at the report, looked at the photos, looked at her face, and basically said, You lost your mind a long time ago. Now reap the rewards. The case didn't last 3 months. It was dismissed. My father got away with it. The tractor? Well, after it was released from the investigation, it went back to the shed. But now, with a special touch. A sign with the words "Territory Cleared" hanging on the front. Over time, things went back to normal. She still lived there, but quietly. The looks that used to be authoritative became looks of pity or sarcasm. They passed her in the street and lowered the volume of their conversations, as if they didn't want to give the stage away. The children in the neighborhood made fun of the lopsided house that had only one side. And the best thing? The HOA lost its morale. After so many scandals and board members quitting, a new election was held. Sensible people took over. People who understood that the community didn't need a dictator of rules, but a group that would ensure respect without turning other people's grass into a crime. And my father? He's still going strong. He plants, takes care of the yard, runs the tractor from time to time just to keep the engine warm, and maybe, just maybe, to remind the neighborhood that not every relic is useless. There are some things that, even when old, carry history, courage, and an unbreakable will not to bow down to anyone. If she had simply left the tractor alone, none of this would have happened. But she thought she could control everything, and she found out, the hard way, that messing with people who have roots is dangerous. Because there are people who, when they are disrespected, don't shout back. They fight back with a tractor. And don't forget to leave your like and comment below.